Hey guys, my name's Sarika and you're listening to Vocally Annotated, and if you're watching the video version of this podcast, then get ready with me while I discuss beauty. So I wanted to discuss beauty because if you've seen episode 2, then you'll have heard about how I've been on this fragrance kick. Well, throughout the month of November I was on this fragrance kick as I was looking for a new everyday perfume, and through that, doing the research on that and just learning more about fragrances in general, which I did actually address in that episode. I still have yet to learn about it in that respect, because every time I have gone to look up something about fragrance, ends up being about what fragrances you should buy, but I digress. So through doing that, I found Jackie Aina's content again. I used to follow Jackie Aina. I still subscribe to her, but she just doesn't upload on YouTube as much. But anyway, the point is I started re-engaging with her content on TikTok, and then I moved over to YouTube. And I found her makeup tutorials, and I was like, I really like her makeup tutorials. I miss long-form makeup tutorials where people would just sit and they would just talk about whatever random topics while they did their makeup. And I know those things are still there, but they're not nearly as big as they were 5 years ago. So yes, it's got me thinking a lot about beauty as self-care, because Jackie Aina said in previous videos and interviews that fragrance was her first love because she has hyperhidrosis, and that was her gateway into this kind of world growing up. And for me, it was beauty, because I wasn't actually that interested in fashion when I stopped to think about it, which is crazy now, because now, I think it was in the same episode 2, I was talking about my dissertation is going to be on sustainable fashion for my master's in law. And if you ask anyone who knows me, they will say that, yeah, Sarika's interested in textiles, she likes fashion, she likes doing this she's interested in this kind of thing. Cool. People come to me for styling advice, like people in my day-to-day life. So it's mad now, both to me when I stop and think about it, and I'm sure to them if they heard about it, that I wasn't actually interested in fashion that much when I was younger. Fashion to me represented a means to fit in with everyone else, whereas beauty was my gateway into this kind of world, because beauty was about me and it was about my self-worth, and it was self-care for me in that way. Because when I was younger, I really thought of myself as ugly, and I had internalized this thing that if I didn't look beautiful, and beautiful in the way I defined it, then, for example, I would never find love, and I wouldn't make friends, I wouldn't get a job, no one would be interested, all these things hinged on me looking beautiful and palatable and acceptable, and therefore my whole self-image and self-worth hinged on that, which sounds so fucked up to say now, but yeah, fashion was about blending into the crowd and feeling like, okay, I belong in the group, I'm wearing the trends, I'm part of the zeitgeist. But beauty was about feeling confident, feeling comfortable in my own skin, and not feeling like the ugly duckling. And so it was very much about me. It was very me focused in that way, and it was my first love, and that really developed thanks to YouTube. Once I discovered the YouTube makeup scene, this would have been the end of 2011. Yeah, by the beginning of 2012, it was all over for me in that respect. And God, I remember the hours I used to spend after school watching makeup tutorials and all these videos, and I just couldn't get enough of it. But then I don't think that love of beauty developed to the point where I do enjoy getting glam like someone like Jackie Aina, and I know I'm referencing her a lot. Like I said, watching her videos in particular has made me think about this. All this to say that at this point, for me, I don't see getting super glam as self-care. If anything, I see it as really stressful to do, because the skill gap is just too big. Like, I do not have the skills to recreate the looks that I see on YouTube that maybe I, would want to recreate. I mean, when I've tried it, it just doesn't work. The skill gap is there. My skills are not up to that because I don't practice enough. And that's all it comes down to, and there's nothing wrong with that per se. And acknowledging that that's where it comes from. And I think that in the height of me watching YouTube, so we're talking 2012, I was 15. I wasn't, like, even though I was excited by makeup, it's really difficult to say whether I would have, if I'd practiced from the beginning, would I be more comfortable with it now? Because I just don't know. It was hampered, like, quite frankly, for want of a better word, it was hampered at that age, and I was really discouraged from engaging with it. I was always told, like, you're too young for makeup, you're too young for this, you're too young for that. No one understood why it was important to me. I think that's probably a common experience in, at the very least, like, Indian diaspora families. I'm guessing probably extends to other people as well, but yeah, it was that common phrase, right, of like, are you going to school or a fashion show? Specifically, one time I wore red lipstick to school. The point is, the whole thing felt very subversive, and it was really a task to do it. I remember people commenting on me wearing tinted lip balm, like, oh, you're 16 now, so you're wearing makeup. That's the kind of vibe we're talking about when I say that there was a lot of external discouragement around me all the time in those years. And in time, I did internalize that, and I was like, well, I guess I kind of took it, and I was like, well, I do feel beautiful in who I am now, as I grew up, and I started to feel beautiful in who I was, and I was like, well, I feel beautiful in who I am now, and I don't feel like I need all of this. But that's not to say that I don't want it. Now, for years I thought, I don't need all of this, I feel beautiful in who I am. And now I'm realizing that maybe I do want it, and I think I've been having this realization in bits and pieces as I've gone along, but it hasn't come to a head in a way I've been able to articulate until very recently. I do think maybe I would enjoy being glam if I was more used to it, or if I just, saw myself like that more often, like at least once. I think it would really benefit me for me to see myself like that once, like fully done, makeup, hair, everything. Hair is one thing, like hair is another beast to me. I still have not conquered hair at all, but anyway, yeah, I think it would benefit myself. It would benefit me to see myself like that. But at the moment, I don't have that habit because it never developed. And while I do really appreciate now that I don't think I'm ugly, and I'm not trying to mask that through makeup anymore, I do wonder if maybe I should start, because essentially it was beat out of me, and at such a young age. And that makes me really sad. And I would like to try and see how it goes. But then I have had those moments where I've tried that. I mean, in 2019, I was very into makeup again. And this ties into other reasons why makeup never really took off for me, quote unquote. Because I remember in 2019, I tried the Fenty hydrating foundation that they had at the time. And obviously, the big appeal of Fenty is, but I mean, obviously now, but even, especially when it first launched, was that they had a shade for everyone, and I found a foundation shade that matched, and that encouraged me to start looking more into makeup, because when I was a teenager, I remember I used to try and go get shade matched at places, and at the time I was looking for something very light, something like a skin tinted moisturizer kind of consistency. I remember I really wanted to try Chanel Vitalumia Aqua, and that was a really thin fluid foundation. They just didn't have a shade for me, and that was often the case when I went to try and go get shade matched for different things, and that was really off-putting in and of itself. But that could be a whole separate conversation. But yes, I did have I don't know what you would call it, like a bout of being interested in makeup again in 2019. And I carried through to 2020, and I bought this eyeshadow palette for myself at the start of the pandemic. I thought, now's my time to really lock in and get good at doing my makeup and channel that glam look, because now's the perfect time to practice. I'm not going to see anyone. I have all this time to try new things, wash it off, try again. And it just didn't happen. I think maybe I was expecting too much, because like I said, it had already been beat out of me and I didn't have the habit. And here I was trying to actively cultivate it from scratch. And so it just didn't happen. The eyeshadow palette just lay there collecting dust until I gave it away to my best friend. So I guess that's what this podcast episode is my reflections, and me thinking maybe, I should actively try to cultivate it now. Bearing all of this previous context in mind, maybe I should actively try to cultivate it. Maybe it would make a difference. And I guess I'll see where we go from here. There's kind of a few different threads I want to pick up on here, so I'm just trying to decide which way to go. I think I will say that, having said that about trying to actively cultivate it now, I've also really struggled with the expectations placed on women around beauty, and specifically makeup, since turning 20, that is for a fact. And in 2017, I resolved there was one very specific moment where I was supposed to be going shopping with a friend at uni, and I'd overslept, and I had an hour to get ready. And at the time, it used to take me an hour to do my makeup, and I was not doing like full beat glam face, but because I was trying to go for such a natural look, it took me ages to blend, and like I said, the skill gap, so the skill level just wasn't there. And I remember thinking like, well, should I eat breakfast or should I do my makeup? And then I caught myself and I was like, hang on, why is that even a question? Breakfast is definitely more important, especially for me. Like, I need to eat once I wake up, and I definitely can't walk to a shopping centre, walk around, shop, and then come back comfortably if I haven't eaten anything. I know for some people that works. I'm not one of those people. And so I was like, why is this even a question that you're asking yourself? And from that point, I stopped wearing makeup altogether, because I was like, I need to unlearn this thought process. I think I didn't really start wearing makeup. I started dipping my toe back in the water, but it still wasn't a natural thing for me to include in my routine. It was like, oh, I'm feeling kind of good today, so maybe I'll wear some eyeliner. It didn't become a thing until like 2019, I would say. And like I was talking about the foundation earlier, and that whole thing. So for a good couple of years, that was my default mode. And then it also happened again at the end of last year, where I went out 2 days in a row at the end of the year. So we're talking Boxing Day, and then the 27th, I think, of December, maybe it was 28th, but I went out. And the 26th, I went to meet a friend, and I was wearing makeup, and over the course of the year, my makeup had gone from like a 5 product face to include all these different products to add different like dimension to different parts of the face, and like bronzer is not a thing I naturally use, but I was making sure to include bronzer. Then you have to blend it out and make sure it works with these other things that you're doing. That's the thing, you can't just add one part. It's a sum of moving parts, and as soon as you add one thing, it disrupts everything else, and you have to work around it, especially if, like I said, you're just not skilled enough to just incorporate it and keep it flowing. But yeah, I remember that day feeling, it's not that I didn't feel good, but it's not that the makeup made me feel worse, it just made me feel neutral to meet this friend. And then the next day I went to meet these other friends, and I didn't wear makeup, and I was like, oh, well, I feel no different. So why do I need to put this pressure on myself to wear it? And again, I needed to actively unlearn it. And so from the beginning of this year, I wasn't wearing makeup. It's just not been my default setting. Only now have I started to dip my toe back into, yeah, I might wear makeup on this day. I'm going out and I want to feel nice. That might include makeup. But even then, it's still not a thing I'm doing every single time. Again, the habit isn't there. The habit isn't there. Like doing my skincare is, and making sure that my skin is hydrated and soft and comfortable feeling. And that's the thing, like with skincare, you can play it off and excuse it in a more medical sense. Because like, oh, well, I can't have dry skin because that's physically uncomfortable. Not good for your skin, it's not good for your body. Like, your skin is your biggest organ, you have to look after it. You can excuse a lot of things when it comes to skincare. With makeup, you can't. Like, it's purely aesthetic. And there's no sugarcoating it. But yes, so been incorporating it a bit more throughout this year, and now that's culminated in me having this sort of thing in my head, this, I don't know what you would call it, dilemma, confrontation about whether I do want to incorporate getting glam more, but for the sake of like my younger self and for the sake of that person. But at the same time, I'm not that person anymore, and I also don't like the expectations placed around beauty and the idea that, you know, because I'm going out somewhere nice, then getting ready includes makeup. Because sometimes I think, no, fuck you. Why does that have to be included in it? It's fine if it's like a bonus, but it shouldn't be the default. And so I have conflicting feelings about that, and I think that a lot of those feelings do stem from the fact that while I don't appreciate the fact that this hobby I had was beat out of me before it even had a chance to take wings, I think to an extent the people around me were right, because as I said at the beginning of this episode, I really saw myself as this ugly duckling, and I was trying to find self-esteem and self-worth in how I looked, because I thought that I was ugly and therefore no one would like me. And ultimately I needed to unlearn that. Seriously, that was not a healthy way to be thinking at all. And I ultimately like who I am now. So I can't sit here and say, and I'm not going to sit here and say that if things had gone differently, I would be better off. Because I don't know if that would be true, right? I think if we go back to that discussion about first loves, that difference in how I viewed beauty and fashion is so interesting to me, that fashion was explicitly to fit in. At the time, you know, as a teenager, I didn't have a concept of a personal style or doing what I wanted. Now I very much have that concept, but at the time I didn't. It was very much externally focused. Beauty, my interest in beauty rituals and makeup and all this stuff was to make myself feel worthy, and it was so internally focused. And it's also interesting because it reminds me of how at the time admitting my interest in beauty and fashion was really embarrassing. Beauty in particular, it was really embarrassing to me. Like, I don't think many people at my school knew, because I didn't feel like I was worthy of those interests, because I wasn't stylish or pretty. And so, like, I always felt like if I told someone I loved watching makeup tutorials, they'd be like, oh, well, you love beauty videos and yet you're still so ugly, like you clearly didn't learn anything from them. Even the people I did tell, I felt like that was the thing that was playing in their head. But I'm glad I took a chance and was vulnerable with those people anyway. And I had at least a couple people to share that side of me with. I have come such a long way from who I was at 15 to who I am at 28. And that is very normal, understandable. Like, girl, you're not saying anything groundbreaking. I know. For me, I worked on myself a lot. If you can't tell already from this podcast with 5 episodes in, I love a self-reflection moment. I love to reflect on the things going on around me, how I feel. I love to express those feelings. This is my medium for a reason. And so I did work on myself a lot. And I continue to work on myself. So this is not, what I'm about to say is not to discredit my own hard work. No, sorry, definitely not. But I do think being loved has made the biggest difference. And the reason why I say that is because even before I met my partner, I still kind of had this mindset from when I was a teenager. It wasn't as strong as when I was a teenager, but I still felt like, oh, I have to look a certain way before I can really start dating and people take me seriously, and I have to lose weight and tone up and I have to do all these things that will make people take me seriously as a potential suitor, for want of a better word. I really felt this urge to, and it's no different, really. I mean, it's to a lesser extent, but it's still along the same veins as me as a teenager thinking that I need beauty. And I say, when I have been using the word beauty, I should preface this at the beginning, but I mean beauty as a whole. Beauty as the ritual. Beauty, whether it's makeup, skincare, haircut, like whatever it is. Beauty. I guess we'll focus on makeup. But I need beauty in order for people to like me. In whatever capacity. But I need that. And so, before I met my partner, it wasn't about beauty, but it was about something else. Like, the mindset was still there. And I made massive strides, so it wasn't nearly as strong, but it did need that little push from seeing the proof. And he has provided that and gone above and beyond in doing that. And I'm so grateful to him for that. And yeah, this is only something I've realised, upon thinking about this whole topic. And I'm not saying that you can't feel better unless you're in a relationship. Absolutely not. I'm just saying that this is how it went for me. And the reason why I say it made the biggest difference is because it was the necessary push over the edge into understanding and accepting that people will still like you regardless, right? Whether they like you or not. But this is not what's going to make or break it. But yeah, it's just something that worked for me, and I do think it is also worth considering to an extent. And I say this very loosely, lightly, take it with a pinch of salt, because as I was describing, I thought I had to have everything figured out before I could date. And it's like, no, we're social creatures. We can do a lot more for each other when we share our vulnerabilities, rather than expecting that we should isolate and figure it all out by ourselves. So to an extent, I do think there is some beauty, no pun intended, in, getting that from letting other people help you. And it's not about letting them validate you. It's about taking that love and using it to accept yourself, I think is what it comes down to. And on that note, I will end this episode here. Obviously, this episode is very different from the ones I've done up till now. I mean, this is only episode 5. so let's not get ahead of ourselves. But it was entirely my personal reflections, right? And I guess all I can say is I hope that it resonates with someone. Even the manner in which I've recorded it, I'm recording this on my phone, but why not try a different style? I hope you guys like this, and I will be back next week with a new episode. So take care and have a lovely rest of your day.